Trefn. The National Assembly is now in session. Item 1, questions to the First Minister. Question 1, Mike Hedges.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. What recent discussions have the First Minister had in relation to policing in Wales?
Well, I've not had any recent discussions personally. My colleague Leslie Griffiths, of course, the Minister for Local Government and Government Business, holds regular meetings with the Chief Constables and Police and Crime Commissioners.
Thank you, First Minister. With policing devolved to Scotland and Northern Ireland, and also the land is in Germany and the Spanish regions, excluding items such as border controls and terrorism, does the First Minister agree with me that policing should be devolved to Wales now?
Yes, I think there's a very strong case for devolving policing to Wales. They are the only emergency service, at least on land, that have not been devolved. And it makes sense as the fire service has been devolved, and of course the ambulance service for the police to follow suit. And that, of course, is the evidence that the Welsh Government has given to the SIL Commission.
Byron Davis.
First Minister, could you confirm to the Chamber whether you participated in any form in Lord Stevens' commission for the Labour Party into the future of policing, and specifically whether you agree with the Labour Party recommendation of only one police force in Wales?
There are 3 recommendations. One recommendation is one police force for Wales. I do not think we can go that far. What is required first is the devolution of policing. Then it will be a matter for the Assembly to decide what the shape of the constabularies in Wales would be in the future.
Rhynap Iorwerth.
Diolch, Dirprwy Lywydd. O'n i falch o glywed eich ateb chi funud yn ôl. O'n i'n trafod efo un o uwchswyddogion heddlu'r gogledd rai dyddiau yn ôl yn deud I bod nhw'n eiddgar I gydweithio llawer mwy efo'r gwasanaeth tân, ond bod yna deimlad bod Llywodraeth Cymru ddim am weld hynny'n digwydd oherwydd mae dim ond un ohonyn nhw, sef y gwasanaeth tân, oedd wedi cael ei ddatganoli. O ystyried eich cefnogaeth chi I ddatganoli'r heddlu, oni dydy'n gwneud synwyr felly y bydda datganoli'r heddlu ynghyd â'r system gyfiawnder troseddol yn helpu y math yna o gydweithrediad ar bob lefel?
Wel, mae yna gydweithio yn cymryd lle nawr, wrth gwrs, mae nhw'n siarad gyda'i gilydd, mae'r gwasanaethau argyfwng yn rhan o'r Resilience Forum hefyd, mae'n bwysig I bwysleisio, ac wrth gwrs mae'r heddlu'n gweithio'n agos gyda ni fel Llywodraeth. Dyna pham yn ein barn ni, mae'n peth call I symud I sefyllfa lle beth sy'n nawr yn digwydd yn cael ei wneud yn ffurfiol yn y dyfodol.
Question 2, Lynn Neagle.
Will the First Minister make a statement on the Welsh Government's priorities for the environment in Torfaen?
Yes, the Programme for Government and the NRF Ministers' autumn statement set out our priorities for the environment across Wales.
First Minister, will you join me in commending the Minister for Housing and Regeneration for doing the right thing by the people of Arteg and rejecting plans to open cast that would have threatened the viability of a school, jeopardised a UNESCO World Heritage Site and blighted an entire community? But as we look to the future, will you now work with the Minister to draw upon the very important lessons from this case, ensuring that communities like Fartig never again have to endure years of crippling uncertainty, particularly when we have an MTAN in place that is meant to protect them?
Well, I'm very much aware, of course, of the number of occasions that the member has raised the issue of Fartig in this chamber, and she has made the views of her constituents very clearly known. She will appreciate, of course, that given the fact that we are still within the 6-week period for legal challenge of the Minister's decision, that I cannot comment on the application itself. But nevertheless, with regard to the planning system generally, of course, we have the planning reform bill that is being taken forward now, and further consideration given to a planning bill in the future during the course of this Assembly as well.
William Graham.
Thank you, Officer. Certainly today, the Torfaen County Borough Council are quite likely to agree their LDP. Provides for a large number of housing. It's difficult to quite see why they need so many within the plan, though it does extend for many years. A lot of that housing is on greenfield sites. How does that conflict with your environmental policies?
We, of course, would have to examine any potential LDP, and it's for the Minister to decide what action he may or may not wish to take with regard to any LDP during the adoption process.
Lindsay Whittle.
Well, First Minister, a similar question to my colleague William Graham. So far, Torfaen has a good rating for air quality, but with the prospect of a further almost 5,000 homes to be built in Torfaen, what safeguards then can be put in place to make sure that the degree of air pollution in Torfaen will not seriously deteriorate?
I don't see how there's necessarily a correlation between housing and air pollution. If people are able to live more closely to where they live, that will reduce air pollution. We would, of course, expect any local authority when developing its LDP to assess the need for housing in any particular area, and of course to produce an LDP that takes into account all the planning guidance that the Welsh Government has issued.
I will now call the party leaders to question the First Minister. Leader of the Opposition, Andrew R.T. Davies.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. First Minister, today we had the very disappointing news that the PISA results have been depressingly bad again. The OECD say today's education is tomorrow's economy. With the figures that we've seen today and the successive falls in our performance, doesn't it make for bleak reading and in particular a bleak future for our economy?
Well, first of all, I have to say that even though we've seen some improvement, particularly in reading, the figures are disappointing overall. That cannot be got away from. Nevertheless, we should remember that the PISA results are, with regard to a particular set of tests, they're not a reflection of the education system as a whole. But nevertheless, what I can say, of course, is to remind members of what has been put in place since 2009 with the last set of PISA results, namely the National Literacy and Numeracy Programme. The National Support Programme, Every School in Wales, now has an NSP partner who acts as a mentor. The changes that have been made to supporting professional development, particularly performance management of teachers from January 2012, and of course the development of the induction process for newly qualified teachers. We have of course Teach First Wales, which has been contracted to deliver a school improvement employment-based teacher training programme across Wales, and 150 trainees have been placed in secondary schools that have been targeted as having a high percentage of pupils living in deprived communities. We've focused on leadership development, particularly, of course, the revision of the National Professional Qualification for Headship. We've published new leadership standards as well and developed leadership capacity. We have, of course, strengthened school accountability through school banding and the termly stock takes. We have, of course, Learning Wales, launched in September 2012, the National Model for Regional Working, and, of course, the Plaid Cymru benches complain, I don't give answers. This, I suspect, is an answer that they want, so there's no point complaining about it, I suggest. And, of course, that we have what the improvements that have been made in attendance and behaviour. Now, it will take some time for these measures to bear full fruit. The previous Education Minister and this one, of course, have said that we wish to be in the top 20 by 2015. Michael Gove, of course, in England has said it would take 10 years to improve the situation in England. We think that is an overestimate.
That's the longest answer that I've ever had in First Minister's questions, and to start with to say that there's been some improvements. Whichever way you cut it, First Minister, these figures today are depressingly bad, but unfortunately depressingly familiar from a Labour First Minister whose party has been running education here in Wales for 14 years. And the previous Education Minister, in a letter that he put out in 2010, clearly thought the same when he said, these results cannot be argued away or excused. He went on to say that the results cannot be excused on the basis of socio-economic status or bilingual nature of our nation or education system. The list that you just gave us no doubt could have been read at any juncture when previous PISA results have been reported. The problem being is, First Minister, that educationalists, students and parents are fed up of listening to Labour's excuses. How can we genuinely have confidence that what you outlined there in your answer to me will make a difference this time round?
Well, he didn't listen clearly to the answer I gave. I said this is what's been put in place since 2009. The second point I'd make to him is this. We've constantly said it will take time for these measures to have an effect. What perhaps the people of Wales would like to know is what exactly he quibbles with in terms of what I've just read out as an answer to him. What would he have done differently? How does he explain to the people of Wales that his party wants to cut education spending by between 12 and 20%? And how that would help to improve PISA results in the future? If he had some credibility on this point in terms of a developed alternative, if he had some credibility in terms of wanting to increase school spending, as we are doing, of course, through our manifesto commitment protecting school spending in Wales, then of course he might have some credibility. But it will be interesting for the Chamber to understand what he disagrees with in terms of what the government is doing and why he thinks that education spending should be cut.
I think it is quite shameful that on a day when we've had more damning evidence of educational failure under Labour, you cannot show any humility to the people of Wales who've depended on education as a route out from poverty, as a route to good jobs, and above all, developing an economy fit for the 21st century. Are you seriously telling me, First Minister, that the previous education ministers before 2009 got it wholly wrong? And if you are, will you apologise on their behalf as leader of Welsh Labour? And what, when the new results come out in 2015, can we expect? Will you now take control and ultimately put your reputation on the line that we will see the improvement that we require in 2015 to make the economic prospects of this country far better? If you won't, then you really should reflect on your position, First Minister.
Well, can I say in response to the Leader of the Opposition, I went to a comprehensive school. I have a stake in the state system. That's what I am proud of. It is a shameful reflection of the UK that of all the Prime Ministers and First Ministers there have ever been, only one has come from a comprehensive, and that's me. Only one. That's a shameful reflection. And his party's made it worse. Worse. Sits there with his Etonian Prime Minister, the private school boys that sit on those benches, and he lectures us about state education. He didn't listen to what I said. There is no point in whining about it at the top of his voice. He did not listen to what I said. These results are not good enough. These results are not good enough. These results have to be improved on. Yes, reading has improved, but we still have to make sure that there's improvement in the future. I offered him the opportunity to comment on what we as a government are doing. He could give no view. I offered him the opportunity to justify the appalling cuts that he wants to impose on schools in Wales. He failed to justify those cuts. He makes a lot of noise. He makes a lot of noise, but he has no substance and no policies. We accept our responsibilities. We accept that we must work with teachers and with parents in order to continue to improve the education system in Wales. And we have seen an improvement in GCSE results this year. And that is why we will continue to deliver for the people of Wales, even as the party opposite shout and not want to do anything more than cut education spending. They suggest the word class war. What they want to do is to cut spending for the poorest in society, cut spending on state schools, and that's exactly what the Tories stand for. We will stand up for our responsibilities. We accept responsibility for these results. We have put in place a system that will help to improve education in Wales, whereas on the Conservative benches, what we get is empty rhetoric.
Order. I have said before, this is not a library, far less a monastery, but there's far too much shouting going on and not enough listening. That's not good scrutiny. I now call the Leader of Plaid Cymru, Leanne Wood.
First Minister, you are the leader of this country and you are failing to show leadership on this. You said that your term of office would be all about delivery, and you told us, I expect to see improvement in our PISA results in December. Well, it is now December. Today, you have delivered the worst set of PISA results in Western Europe. Are you now going to take full responsibility for those results?
Well, as I said to the Leader of the Opposition, we do accept as a government that there needs to be improvement with regard to PISA, as indeed your party did when you were in government between 2007 and 2011. There has been some improvement. It is far from enough. Far from enough. There needs to be more improvement in terms of reading and maths. We know that's true of the whole of the UK, incidentally, where things have not been particularly good in England, Scotland or Northern Ireland either. And I don't use that as an excuse because I see the figures in front of me as far as Wales is concerned. But I've already outlined in some detail what we as a government have put forward in order to deal with the situation and to improve PISA results in 2015. And unless there is something in the government's programme that you disagree with or something you think should be improved, which I'm all ears about, then this is what we plan to do as a government to improve things.
First Minister, 43rd in maths, 41st in reading and 36th in science. Now, as a parent, I do not accept that any of our children are any less capable than the children in Scotland, in Ireland or in England. Now, Scotland also has large pockets of deprivation. It's substantially outperforms Wales, though, even though it has the same set of tools for delivering those results. If the Scottish Government can deliver good results, why can't you?
Well, indeed, that is the challenge for us, and we have to ensure that by 2015 we do deliver those results. In fairness, I mean, the education ministers have said, two of them, that what we've put in place will take some time to work its way through. Michael Gove was talking about 10 years. I've said I think that's an overestimate in terms of what it will take. Well, who knows in England what they'll need to do there. But as far as Wales is concerned, we've consistently said that what was put in place after PISA 2009 would take some time to have its fullest effect. Yes, we've seen an improvement in reading, but let's face it, overall it's not good. And we need to make sure that things improve in 2015.
Well, let's look at the question of implementation then, shall we? There have been delays in the implementation of your policies, regional consortia, and the recently introduced National Literacy and Numeracy Framework. Now, these delays mean that we will miss your government's 2015 improvement targets. Isn't it the case, First Minister, that if your government was a local authority, it would now be in special measures? Can you tell us this afternoon, why should parents continue to trust your government with their children's education?
Because we've delivered the foundation phase, because we've delivered the Welsh back, because we've protected school spending in a way that isn't there in the rest of the UK, because we've seen an improvement in GCSE results in Wales and the gap with England has been closed, because we've seen, for example, the education maintenance allowance being kept in Wales when it's disappeared in England, because we've ensured that students in Wales are able to go to university with an enormous debt hanging around their heads when they leave university. And so we have to remember that the PISA results are a reflection of part of the system in Wales, namely children's ability to take tests, and we have to rectify that. But it would not be right to say that education in Wales is in some kind of crisis. We have the foundation phase, we have all the other figures that we know that show things are moving in the right direction, but there is a need. There is a need for government working with teachers, because government can't deliver it alone, and working with parents and local authorities to ensure that there are improvements in the future. The reality is that we have a programme in place, unless other parties can say what is wrong with those programmes or what they would do different. The Conservatives have failed signally to do that. The Leader of the Opposition sits there moaning away to himself, but when he's given the chance to talk, he always runs away from it. We have put in place a programme for government that contains an education programme that will move us towards improvement in 2015, and we are confident in that. And I speak as somebody who came from the system, whereas others in this chamber who complain the most did not.
I must say we have a very generous procedure in this chamber for the leaders of the non-government parties to question, and I don't particularly want to hear heckling from the leaders in stereo whilst I'm trying to listen to the response of the First Minister. And I'll call the leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats, Kirsty Williams.
A spotlight on education performance across the world. And on that international stage, under the glare of that spotlight, the abject failure of Labour's education policies have been exposed for everyone to see. As a Labour Assembly member for 14 years, as a Cabinet member for 13 years, and now as the First Minister of our nation, are you not ashamed? Complacent, complacent. You have said it was your ambition to be in the top 20 by 2015. We are barely scraping into the top 40. Why have you consistently promised me, this chamber, and the Welsh public when questioned that we would see improvements this year?
We did see an improvement, but not enough this year. And I've said that very clearly. As the Leader of the Liberal Democrats sneered away and asked that question, I'd remind her of that. Let's go through it again, because you didn't listen the first time round. The National Literacy and Numeracy Programme, the National Support Programme, Supporting Professional Development, Teach First Wales, Leadership Development, Strengthening Accountability, Learning Wales, National Model for Regional Working, and Dealing with Attendance and Behaviour, all put in place since 2009. As I've said, it will take a little more time for these improvements to have their full force. But I say to the Leader of the Liberal Democrats, as I've said to the leaders of the other parties, if you don't like it, what would you change?
First Minister, let's be clear about the improvements. The reading scores take us back to where we were in 2006. Just 2 months ago, in this very chamber, you said to me, and I quote, "I expect to see an improvement in our PISA results in December. If you see what we have done as a government, you will understand why I believe we will make improvements." How can you, as the First Minister, be so out of touch, ignorant and blissfully unaware to the reality of the situation and what is going on, that you could make that statement 2 months ago that is so off the mark?
I've never heard a more arrogant statement in this chamber. Some of the leader of the Liberal Democrats is in tune with public opinion, and I am not. Like her, I have children in school. I don't go on and on about it. She does, but I have children in school as well. And the reality of the situation is that unlike her party, which is completely detached from reality in London, completely lost its support base, and she talks to us about being detached from reality. I deal with people. I hold my constituency surgeries. I meet with people on the weekend. I see what my children have in school. All these things make me more than aware of the education system. I came through the state system as well, and I'm aware of what the state system is able to deliver, and of course our aspirations for it in the future. Now, I've offered the opposition party, they have quite rightly, of course they have, held me to account in terms of the PISA results, and I accept that. It is my responsibility to explain to the people of Wales what we are doing in order to improve results in the future. But it's also a responsibility for the opposition parties to outline what they would do differently. And not once have we heard a suggestion as to how things would be done differently. We accept our responsibilities, they do not, and in that regard they have signally failed.
Question 3, Mohammed Ashka.
Officer, will the First Minister make a statement on the level of business rates in South East Wales, please?
Yes, the level of non-domestic rates in South East Wales is determined on the same basis as elsewhere in Wales by multiplying the rateable value by the national NDR multiplier.
Thank you very much for the reply, Minister. The proposed redevelopment of Newport City Centre is greatly welcome and will benefit businesses in the long term. However, the current demolition work has caused major disruption to pedestrian access and bus stop location, thereby reducing footfall. Will the First Minister join me in supporting Newport's Chamber of Trade in their efforts to get business rates reduced for city centre traders adversely affected by the redevelopment of this work?
Well, these are matters, of course, for them to discuss with the City Council in Newport, and I'm sure the City Council will consider proposals, affordable proposals, that will help to regenerate the city centre.
Jocelyn Davis.
Deputy Presiding Officer. First Minister, I'm sure you'll be aware that this weekend marks the first Small Business Saturday in the UK, and I hope that you'd also agree that increased financial powers for Wales gives us an opportunity to revitalise our town centres. And in the run-up to Christmas, are you willing to give some cheer to small high street shops by committing to increasing rate relief?
Well, we can't do it at this moment in time, clearly, but what will change things, of course, would be the full devolution of business rates to Wales. That will enable us to have more tools at our disposal to help small businesses and others. And I know that the EST Minister is actively considering how we can take forward those new powers when we get them.
Question 4, Lindsay Whittle.
First Minister, what is the Welsh Government doing to promote the living wage among employers in Wales, please?
Well, we do encourage employers to adopt the living wage as one of a range of positive actions to help alleviate the problems caused by low wages in Wales.
Thank you for your answer, First Minister. The Welsh Government is currently consulting on the draft Public Services Workforce Bill. What assurances can you give that guidance from the Welsh Government on paying staff in the public sector a living wage will be a key element in the eventual bill? And can you make it clear that your procurement policy that employers in Wales who pay a living wage to staff will be given priority for securing contracts?
Well, the Public Services Workforce Bill is not primarily to do with the living wage, it's more to do with the two-tier code. What I can say to the member is that the Workforce Partnership Council have agreed to bring the living wage in the public sector under the remit of the Council itself, where it can be considered in the strategic context of broader issues with both trades unions and public sector employees. I can further tell the member that the Council meeting yesterday It did consider a paper which looked at the living wage in the context of broader workforce issues. And of course, there are some possibilities the Council may consider in the future, such as support for the lowest paid employees, flexible working, learning and development opportunities, sharing best practice and management. So we look now to the Council itself to move forward with the living wage across Wales.
Nick Ramsey.
Thank you. First Minister, I welcome your answer that your government is encouraging employers to deliver on minimum wage, but I'm sure you would agree that we must ensure that that doesn't come at a detrimental cost to businesses. Would you agree with me? The fact is that the amount of income tax paid by someone on the national minimum wage has actually fallen by 70% since the UK coalition government came to power in 2010. Do you support the UK government's continued efforts to change the tax system to benefit the lower paid?
I think those changes would have more effect if more was done to help them with living costs. We know that food inflation has been astronomical, energy inflation has been astronomical over the past 5 years. And we also know that where people have seen even modest pay increases, they have been more than swallowed up by the cost of living increases that they have had to pay out. And the reality is that people's incomes continue to be squeezed as they have done for the past 4 years. And there is a duty on the UK government to make sure that people do see real increases in their wage rates in the future. Simply doing it through the tax system isn't enough. More must be done to help people with the basic costs of living. And that's why, of course, I very much applaud what my own party has done with regard to energy costs.
Question 5, Julie Morgan.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. What plans does the First Minister have to increase the range of flights at Cardiff Airport?
Well, operational matters are the responsibility of the airport board, but I do know that discussions have taken place with a variety of airlines. Indeed, we've seen an increase in the number of Aer Lingus flights, and most recently, the 4 new routes announced by Flybe to ski destinations.
Thank you, First Minister. Is the First Minister aware that Gareth Bale, who is from Cardiff North and attended Whitchurch High School, scored a wonderful hat-trick over the weekend in Spain, and there's great public interest in his move to Real Madrid, but there are no direct flights for football fans to go there. What could the First Minister do to ensure that some of the football fans from Cardiff could fly directly to Madrid?
Well, I would hope that fans in Madrid come to watch Cardiff City and Swansea City as well. Of course, the Premier League must be a two-way flight, if I can put it that way. It's right to say there's no current direct route. I know that the airport discusses many routes with many operators. It has to be a commercial route, of course. But in the meantime, it is possible for fans to travel via Amsterdam with KLM or indeed via Vueling through the Barcelona hub.
Andrew R.T. Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Some 2 years ago, First Minister, you came back from your visit to China and you said it would be relatively easy to establish an air link with China and that you were going to make sure this was going to be a key priority for you from Cardiff Airport. What progress has the government made in doing this? As you said, it is relatively easy and it is a key priority some 2 years ago.
We continue to discuss this with a number of airlines, of course, but there is an issue with regard to the need to widen the runway in order to accept a fully laden A380 jet. But it's a remarkable question from the Tories who wanted the airport to close. I'm quite happy to see it close. We had Byron Davis talking about a £20 million hole in the pension scheme, which didn't exist in reality. But that was his invention, of course. And we also had the opposition party saying if it closes, tough luck. That's, market forces. Let the jobs go. Let British Airways maintenance go. So what have we seen since it was bought? We have seen an 8% increase in passenger numbers. We have seen investment in the airport, further investment planned for next year. That is action compared to the idleness of the Tories.
Leanne Wood.
First Minister, it was very disappointing that long-haul air passenger duty was not included in the tax-varying powers recommended for devolution by the UK Government, especially when we've seen how Belfast Airport has benefited from such powers. I wonder if you regret that when Plaid Cymru colleagues in Westminster put forward an amendment in the Finance Bill to transfer long-haul APD to Wales, that only one Labour MP in the whole of the UK supported that amendment. If another such amendment on the devolution of air passenger duty is put forward again, will you make sure that you guarantee at least some of your Labour Party colleagues will be there in Westminster to support you next time around?
Well, the reality is, of course, that we as a government have made it very clear that we support the devolution of all passenger duty, actually, not just long haul. It raises under £1 million in Wales. We could cut it substantially and it would make have a real effect on the airport. It wouldn't have much of an effect on Bristol. Bristol doesn't have that much long-haul traffic in reality. Bristol's traffic profile is mainly short-haul business destinations and charter. So it wouldn't have affected Bristol. So when the Conservatives argue, as they did, that it would be unfair on Bristol, because Bristol, of course, takes priority over Wales in the thinking of the Secretary of State particularly, that is not an argument that we accepted. We wanted to see the full devolution of air passenger duty, at least, of course, with regard to long haul, something I'm afraid that the present UK government have failed to deliver.
Eleni Parrott.
First Minister, I was glad to see the new seasonal flights returning to Cardiff, but the sad fact remains that passenger numbers at the airport are half what they were 5 years ago. What is your benchmark for success in terms of route development? How many new routes will you want to see delivered by the end of 2014 before you can say that you believe this policy has been a success?
The first thing it has to do is to make a profit and increase its passenger numbers. It will have gone beyond 1 million in terms of the last year. An 8% rise, as I have said. We've seen new routes that have never been flown before from Cardiff, either in charter or scheduled, coming into place, such as Lyon and Grenoble. That is encouraging. It's a very tough market out there, there's no question about that, but I know the airport board are extremely able and extremely willing, particularly, to look at new routes, and an 8% increase in a year is not to be sniffed at in a very competitive market.
Close to 100%.
6, Gwyn Price.
Thank you, Deputy Clywyd. Will the First Minister make a statement on the number of people using prepay meters for energy bills in his line?
Yes, well, information on the number of electric and gas prepayment meter accounts is produced by Ofgem annually for Wales, Scotland and England. In 2012, there were 270,094 households in Wales on electric prepayment meters and 197,815 on gas prepayment meters. Ofgem figures, unfortunately, are not provided for constituency or local authority areas.
Thank you for that answer. First Minister, independent experts estimate that prepay meters can cost customers up to an extra £300 a year in fuel costs. Do you agree with me that this is unacceptable, as it hurts some of the most vulnerable households in our communities?
That is wholly unacceptable for those who are finding it the most difficult to pay their fuel costs. The figure does seem high, but I can say that my officials do meet regularly with Ofgem, and I've asked them to raise with Ofgem what action they're taking to protect prepayment meter customers and ensure they're not paying more than they need to for energy.
Russell George.
Will the First Minister agree with me that the recent announcement made by the UK government to reduce energy bills by an average of £50 a year is a practical step to offset rising household costs and will also benefit tens of thousands of households across Wales? But will he also agree with me that the onus is now on the energy companies to do more to help families this winter, particularly those with low incomes and those who are on prepaid tariffs?
Well, of course, the response to the UK government was directly a response to the policy announced by my own party in September, of freezing energy prices. In a fit of panic, suddenly we get an announcement that there will be a £50 decrease. And that is to be welcomed, of course, but when the average energy bill is £1,300 a year, it's hardly a substantial amount to contribute to people's pockets, particularly on a monthly basis. Far better to freeze prices as proposed by a very sensible Labour government in waiting, rather than, of course, the knee-jerk reaction of a dying government in Westminster.
Jocelyn Davis.
Deputy Presiding Officer. First Minister, are you aware that the UK government will be redefining fuel poverty, and that will result in about 800,000 people suddenly no longer being classed as fuel poor? Of course, they won't be any warmer and they won't be any better off. Can you give us assurances that your government will not be manipulating the figures by redefining and developing a new definition of the fuel poor?
That is not something we'll be looking to do. Of course, we know the Conservatives particularly have form on this. They did this in the 80s with unemployment figures. Where figures are awkward, get rid of the figures. That seems to be the way the Conservatives have always operated.
Question 7, Mark Isherwood.
How is the Welsh Government safeguarding older people in their homes?
Well, we're taking a range of actions to further safeguard older people in their homes, including strengthening safeguarding arrangements, action on rogue traders and doorstep crime, and support, of course, for PCSOs.
Thanks. Well, how will the Welsh Government respond to the call by Age Cymru for the Welsh Government to actively intervene to tackle the inconsistent provision and enforcement of cold calling zones across Wales to protect older people from scams and swindles on the doorstep, where their research shows Torfaen has at least 45 zones, but Swansea only 4. Cardiff hasn't introduced a new one since 2010, and although Flintshire has 64, there have been apparently no prosecutions.
Well, of course, the programme for government sets out our plans to extend no cold calling zones to deter rogue traders and cold callers. Residents in no calling zones who receive a cold caller should report it to their local trading standards department, which should take follow-up action. It's right to say that the figures vary across the whole of Wales, but nevertheless most local authorities have a substantial number of dwellings that are included now in no cold calling zones, and the figure is 38,500 dwellings roughly across the whole of Wales.
Lle Griffith.
Diolch i'r Prylywydd. Wrth gwrs, un o ganlyniadau y technegau ymosodol yma o werthu yw bod bobl ac bobl hŷn yn enwedig felly yn llai parod I newid ar parwyr ynni. Enghraifft, oherwydd y profiad maen nhw'n gael o deimlo dan fygythiad pan bod y cynnig yna yn cael ei roi o'i blaenau nhw ac o ganlyniad wrth gwrs yn talu mwy am ei hynny na gydylen nhw. Odych chi'n credu felly bod pwerau presennol awdurdodau lleol yma, yn y maes yma yn ddigon cryf? Ac os odych chi, yna pam chi'n credu bod y sefyllfa yma'n dal I godi mor gyson fel mae adroddiad Age Cymru wedi dangos?
Credu'r broblem yw, lle mae bobl yn ffono. Yn enwedig lle mae bobl yn ffono lan a falle cynnig rhyw fath o gytundeb I bobl na'r problem mawr. Dwi'n ddim wrth gwrs gallu cael ei reoli ar lefel lleol, nag ar lefel Cymraeg. Wrth gwrs mae'r system TPS yn gweithio, ond does dim pob cwmni yn rhan o hwnna. Felly mae bobl yn tueddu cael 3 neu 4 galwad pob nos, wy'n un ohonyn nhw, wy'n dod I ffôn lawr yn wrth gwrs. Ond mae fe'n broblem wy'n credu dyle cael ei ystyried ar lefel Prydeinig mwyn sicrhau bod sefyllfa gyda ni lle os mae bobl yn gweud bod nhw ddim moyn neb I ffôn o lan, felly does neb yn ffôn o lan. Ar hyn o bryd, system gwirfoddol yw a dwi ddim yn credu bod hwnna'n ddigon nawr i'r dyfodol, fel un sydd yn cael y galwadau hyn yn aml dros ben.
Aled Roberts.
Prif Weinidog, mae'r diffiniad arfaethedig o fewn y bil newydd yn sôn am oedolion dan risg, lle mae rhaid iddo fod yn derbyn gofal neu chefnogaeth. Mae Age Cymru wedi deud bod hyn yn diffiniad rhy gaeth. Fyddwch chi'n barod I ail ystyried y diffiniad gan feddwl hwyrach fyny oedolyn sydd o dan fygythiad o fewn y cartre, ond ddim yn cael cefnogaeth o unrhyw fath, ac ar hyn o bryd fydd y diffiniad newydd ddim yn codi.
Ni digon parod wrth gwrs I drafod rhannau o'r bil I hunan gyda unrhyw blaid, gan bod ni'n credu bod yna fwy na 500 o welliannau ynglyn â'r bil I hunan. Ni'n deall wrth gwrs bod yn bwysig I gael cefnogaeth plaid neu pleidau eraill er mwyn sicrhau bod y bil yn mynd trwyddo. So felly, wy'n siŵr bod y Gweinidog yn digon parod I wrando ar unrhyw sylwadau neu syniadau sydd gan pleidau eraill.
Question 8, Roderick Glyn Thomas.
Pa drafodaethau mae'r Prif Weinidog wedi cael gyda arweinwyr awdurdodau lleol ynghylch cymorthal y cyfrif refeniw tai?
Wel, y cael sargeant sy'n arwain y diwygiadau I gymhorthal y cyfrif refeniw tai. Mae'n cyfarfod ag arweinwyr tai awdurdodau lleol yn rheolaidd gan roi'r wybodaeth ddiweddaraf iddynt yn gyson.
Wrth gwrs, Prif Weinidog, mae yna ddwy ochr I hyn. Yn y lle cyntaf, mae'n rhaid I awdurdodau lleol geisio gweld lle'n union yma nhw'n sefyll gyda'r newidiadau yn y cyfrif refeniw tai, a os ganddyn nhw ddyledion, beth yw I sefyllfa ariannol nhw, ac yma yna negodi hynol o bwysig yn digwydd gyda'r trysodlus ar hyn. A fydd y Gweinidog yn arwain y trafodaethau hynny mwyn sicrhau buddiannau awdurdodau lleol yng Nghymru a galluogi'r awdurdodau lleol hynny I ail fuddsoddi arian mewn adeiladu tai i'w rhenti.
Wel, wrth gwrs, mae yna gyfle gwych gan awdurdodau lleol ynglyn â'r newidiadau sy'n hyn sy'n mynd I ddigwydd, a byddwn ni wrth gwrs yn hybu nhw mwyn bod nhw'n gallu adeiladu y tai, a hefyd wrth gwrs bod nhw'n gallu safio arian yn y pen draw. Mae hwnna'n rhywbeth wrth gwrs allai digwydd o achos y newidiadau hyn.
Paul Davies.
Diolch, Dirprwy Lywyd. Mae'r aelod dros
Dwyrain Cyfyrddin a Dinefwr wedi sôn am y ddyled, wrth gwrs. Gallwch chi ddweud wrthyn ni beth fydd y sefyllfa ynghylch y ddyled a ddelir ar hyn o bryd gan awdurdodau lleol yng Nghymru, a pha rôl bydd Llywodraeth Cymru yn chwarae yn hynny o beth?
Wel, bydd y newidiadau, wrth gwrs, yn sicrhau bod y trosglwyddiad o 73 miliwn o bunnoedd o revenue tai o awdurdodau yng Nghymru i Llywodraeth y Deyrnas Unedig pob blwyddyn yn gorffen. Bydd hwn, wrth gwrs, yn sicrhau bydd awdurdodau lleol yn gallu hunan gyllido yn y dyfodol, a hefyd, wrth gwrs, ni'n credu bydd na ffordd o safio tua 30 miliwn o bunnoedd pob blwyddyn.
Question 9, William Graham.
Presiding Officer, will the First Minister outline the impact of Welsh Government health policies on South Wales East?
Well, the impact of our policies can be seen by the improvement in life expectancy, in treatment outcomes and high levels of patient satisfaction.
I'm grateful to the First Minister for his reply, but he will know that Torfaen and Monmouth consistently have among the lowest ambulance response time to emergency calls. The A&E unit of the Royal Grand Hospital, in the opinion of the CHC, is a place where patients' privacy and dignity are compromised. The Naryn Bevan Health Board has the highest number of patients waiting over 14 weeks for specified diagnostic and therapy services. And the Royal College of Surgeons called for urgent action in relation to elective cardiac surgery. First Minister, when can we expect improved quality of service in South East Wales?
Well, the member will know we've seen the ambulance response times target hit. We are now in a position where cancer waiting times have improved, and they are the same as England, in effect. But what will make a real difference to healthcare in the southeast of Wales, of course, is the Specialist and Critical Care Centre. There is a limit to what can be achieved in the Royal Gwent Hospital, considering the amount of space that's available there and the age of the building. The Health Minister has approved the outline business case for the development, and now the Health Board is preparing a robust full business case, and that will ensure that the development takes into account the outcomes of the South Wales programme.
Question 10, Susie Davis.
Will the First Minister make a statement on the Welsh NHS procedure for assessing individual patient funding requests?
Yes, the IPFR process is generally working effectively and is enabling appropriate access to medicines not recommended for routine use, and the Health Minister recently announced a review of the relevant aspects of the scheme.
Thank you for your answer, First Minister. You'll know the concerns of your constituent, Beth Margetson, and what she's raised about the implementation of this particular process in her own case. She's queried how the decision was reached to refuse her application for Affinita, which is one of 24 non-NHS cancer drugs readily prescribed in England because of the Cancer Drugs Fund, something which, of course, your Labour government and Plaid Cymru deny Welsh patients like Mrs Margetson. First Minister, in your response to my written question, your Health Minister stated that he has announced a review of the IPFR process, but not its extent. Will you confirm today that it will cover all drugs which have not been approved for routine NHS use by NICE or the AWMSG?
I can say that Afinitor is no more widely available in England than it is in Wales.
That's not true.
The fact it's paid for under the Cancer Drugs Fund rather than the Welsh Fund is neither here nor there. The impression is given by the member that Afinitor is available on application. It isn't the case. I can tell the member that the drug itself, in terms of its treatment of advanced breast cancer, because it is available in Wales, but not for breast cancer, in England, there are 7 criteria that have to be satisfied on application for that drug to be made available. It has to be made by and the first cycle of systemic anti-cancer therapy to be prescribed by a consultant specialist specifically trained. There are specifications in terms of the genetic makeup of the tumour. There must be no symptomatic visceral disease. It must be used in combination with exemestane, previous treatment with a non-steroidal aromatase inhibitor. There must be no previous treatment with exemestane for metastatic breast cancer, and no more than 1 line of chemotherapy for the treatment of advanced breast cancer. Now, I'm not going to pretend, not being a medic, that I understand what all those drugs are meant to do, nor do I know, of course, the situation with regard to any particular individual. It is distressing when somebody has cancer. We all understand that. But the impression must not be given, because it is misleading, that Afinitor is available in England at the drop of a hat on prescription. It isn't. There are 7 quite difficult criteria that have to be met in England via the Cancer Drugs Fund. The impression is sometimes given the Cancer Drugs Fund just provides funding for drugs, no questions asked. It does not do that. And we know on the figures that have been produced by NHS England that the Cancer Drugs Fund is less successful in terms of approving non-approved drugs for treatment than is the system we have in Wales. So my point would be, actually what needs to happen is the system in Wales needs to catch up, a system in England needs to catch up with the system in Wales and give people more chance in England.
And question 11, Peter Black.
Will the First Minister make a statement on the Welsh Government's policy on credit unions?
We want to see a sustainable, financially resilient credit union movement in Wales that works together in a collaborative and effective way, and we want credit unions to offer a range of services to support those who are financially excluded, ultimately, of course, to support our tackling poverty agenda.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister. You will know in a letter to the Communities Committee, the relevant Minister made it clear that the amount of money available for credit unions next year is roughly half what is available this year. Given that the ambitions you have for credit unions, and given the large number of credit unions, many of which are not sustainable in the medium term, do you actually have a plan as to how you can make these credit unions sustainable so as to meet the objectives which you have with them, given that you are at the same time cutting funding for them?
Well, we are committed, of course, to supporting Welsh credit unions to improve their financial viability. They must be financially viable in the end. They can't forever be supported. Otherwise, of course, there are difficult issues there. What I can say was a letter was issued to credit unions last week that stated that the Welsh Government is prepared to continue to offer financial support to credit unions, but can only do so if there is a clear desire on the part of the credit unions to work with the Welsh Government in order to achieve their long-term financial sustainability.
Thank you, First Minister.